Welcome to the Marty Smith Show.
It's 2025 and Donald J. Trump is still casting a long shadow over American politics. Despite leaving the White House 3 years ago, his presence looms large, shaping the national discourse and fueling partisan battles. Democrats, still reeling from his tumultuous presidency and unexpected return to the political stage, are grappling with how to effectively oppose him. The party remains deeply divided on strategy, with some advocating for aggressive confrontation, while others favor a more measured approach. This internal struggle has played out in a series of protests, symbolic gestures, and legislative maneuvers, all aimed at undermining Trump's agenda and discrediting his rhetoric. Yet these efforts have often appeared disorganized and ineffective, fueling accusations of Trump derangement syndrome from the right, and raising questions about the Democrats' ability to mount a cohesive opposition. As Trump gears up for another potential presidential run, Democrats face a critical question. How do you combat a force as relentless and unpredictable as Donald Trump? The answer, it seems, remains elusive. The party's efforts to counter Trump have been met with mixed results, revealing deep divisions within its ranks and a lack of clear direction. This essay will examine the various tactics employed by Democrats in their ongoing battle against Trump, analyzing their effectiveness and exploring the challenges they face in countering his enduring appeal. The term Trump derangement syndrome has become a familiar refrain in American politics, a catch-all phrase used by conservatives to dismiss any and all criticism of Donald Trump as irrational and unhinged. It suggests that Trump's opponents are so blinded by their hatred for the man that they are incapable of engaging with his ideas or acknowledging his accomplishments in a rational manner. This accusation, while often deployed as a rhetorical bludgeon, has nevertheless seeped into the national consciousness, shaping perceptions of the Democratic Party and its response to the Trump phenomenon. It feeds into a broader narrative that portrays Democrats as out-of-touch elites, driven by emotion rather than logic, and more interested in scoring political points than in serving the interests of the American people. The reality, of course, is far more nuanced. While there are undoubtedly those within the Democratic Party who harbor a visceral dislike for Trump, to suggest that this sentiment is the sole driving force behind their opposition is a gross oversimplification. Democrats have legitimate policy disagreements with Trump, and many are deeply troubled by his rhetoric and behavior, which they believe has eroded democratic norms and coarsened political discourse. The battle lines between Democrats and Trump are perhaps most visibly drawn in the halls of Congress, where the former president's allies and opponents engage in a daily tug-of-war over legislation, nominations, and the very direction of the country. This struggle has often spilled out of committee rooms and onto the House and Senate floors, manifesting in a series of protests, disruptions, and other acts of defiance. One recent example occurred during Trump's highly anticipated address to a joint session of Congress, an event that was widely seen as an opportunity for the former president to reassert his dominance over the Republican Party and lay out his vision for the future. Anticipating a confrontational speech, Democratic lawmakers debated various methods of protest, including walkouts, coordinated wardrobe choices, and the use of props such as signs and noisemakers. While some Democrats argued for a more dignified presence, urging their colleagues to remain silent and listen to Trump's remarks, others felt that more forceful action was necessary to register their disapproval. This internal debate highlights the dilemma facing Democrats. How do you effectively oppose a figure like Trump, who thrives on confrontation and seems impervious to traditional forms of criticism? The internal divisions within the Democratic Party over how to best oppose Trump were on full display in the recent censure of Reverend Al Green of Texas. Green, a vocal critic of Trump, was censured by the House of Representatives for disrupting Trump's congressional address in protest of proposed cuts to Medicaid. Green's actions, while supported by some of his Democratic colleagues, were condemned by others, who argued that they were counterproductive and only served to further divide the party. The censure vote itself was largely along party lines, with 10 Democrats joining Republicans in voting to reprimand Green. This incident underscores the challenges facing Democratic leaders as they attempt to unify their party against a common opponent. While there is broad agreement among Democrats that Trump's policies are harmful and his rhetoric is dangerous, there is less consensus on how best to counter him. This lack of unity has hampered the party's ability to present a coherent message and mount an effective opposition. Section 5. Symbolic Gestures. The Democratic Women's Caucus Protest. Another recent example of the Democratic Party's struggle to find its footing in the age of Trump was the Democratic Women's Caucus protest during Trump's congressional address. Members of the caucus, dressed in pink to symbolize power and opposition, were a visible presence throughout the speech. While the protest was intended to send a message of solidarity and resistance, it was widely criticized as disorganized and ineffective. Some members of the caucus chose to wear other colors, such as blue and yellow in support of Ukraine or black in solidarity with victims of sexual assault, diluting the intended message. Moreover, the protest itself was largely symbolic, lacking any concrete demands or calls to action. While symbolic gestures can be powerful tools for raising awareness and mobilizing support, they are often insufficient on their own to effect real change. In this case, the protests seemed to reinforce the perception of Democrats as more interested in performative displays of resistance than in developing a coherent strategy for opposing Trump. Section 6. A failure to connect. Critiques of the Democratic strategy. The various protests, disruptions, and symbolic gestures employed by Democrats in their opposition to Trump have been met with mixed reactions even within the party itself. While some have praised these efforts as necessary acts of defiance against an authoritarian president, others have criticized them as being counterproductive and ultimately ineffective. One of the most common criticisms leveled at the Democratic strategy is that it is too focused on Trump himself rather than on the issues that matter most to voters. By constantly attacking Trump's character and rhetoric, Democrats risk alienating voters who may disagree with Trump on some issues but are turned off by what they perceive as excessive negativity and partisanship. Furthermore, by focusing so much attention on Trump, Democrats risk elevating his status and giving him free publicity. Trump thrives on attention, and by constantly engaging with him, Democrats risk amplifying his message and giving him a larger platform from which to spread his divisive rhetoric. Section 7. The Power of the Bully Pulpit. Trump's Enduring Influence. Despite being out of office, Trump retains a remarkable hold on the Republican Party and continues to exert significant influence over American politics. He has repeatedly hinted at a possible 2024 presidential run, and his endorsement remains highly sought after by Republican candidates seeking to appeal to his base of supporters. Trump's enduring influence can be attributed in part to his mastery of the bully pulpit. He understands the power of media attention and has skillfully exploited it to his advantage throughout his career. He is a master of generating headlines, whether through provocative tweets, outrageous statements, or by simply refusing to conform to the norms of presidential behavior. This ability to command attention and shape the national conversation has allowed Trump to maintain a level of relevance and influence that few former presidents have enjoyed. He remains a potent force in American politics, and his shadow looms large over the Democratic Party as it seeks to chart a path forward. Section 8. The Search for a Winning Strategy. As Democrats grapple with how to effectively oppose Trump and counter his enduring influence, they are engaged in an ongoing debate over strategy. Some argue for a more aggressive approach, believing that Trump must be confronted head-on at every turn. Others favor a more measured approach, focusing on policy differences and attempting to win back voters who may have been turned off by Trump's rhetoric, but still support some of his policies. Finding the right balance between these two approaches will be crucial for Democrats as they seek to regain their footing and build a winning coalition in the years to come. They must find a way to effectively counter Trump's divisive rhetoric and appeal to voters who are disillusioned with the current state of American politics. This will require a multifaceted strategy that includes both strong opposition to Trump's policies and a compelling affirmative vision for the future. Democrats must articulate a clear and concise message that resonates with voters and offers a viable alternative to Trump's brand of populism. Section 9. Conclusion. The Future of the Resistance. The Democratic Party's struggle to oppose Trump is a microcosm of the larger challenges facing American democracy in the 21st century. In an era of hyper-partisanship, social media echo chambers, and a 24/7 news cycle, it is increasingly difficult to have rational, fact-based discussions about important issues. Trump's presidency has exacerbated these challenges, but it has also created an opportunity for a renewed conversation about the values and principles that underpin American democracy. As Democrats chart a path forward, they must find a way to engage in this conversation in a way that is both principled and pragmatic. The future of the Democratic Party, and indeed of American democracy itself, may depend on their ability to do so. Only by finding a way to bridge the partisan divide and engage with a broader swath of the electorate can Democrats hope to counter the forces of division and intolerance that Trump represents.